Hello, you retards and screwheads. Welcome to another exciting edition of my show. It's Sunday, so I'm not really going to focus on the news at hand. I'm going to take the show in a different direction today. And I want to talk about this thing that's happened at Gateway Church in Texas. Gateway has a lot of churches in Texas. It's considered the biggest Christian organization in all of America. They have more members than that Satanist Joel Osteen. And their pastor is named Robert Morris. It came out just about maybe 10 days ago, something like that, where when he was in his 20s, he raped a 12-year-old girl on Christmas. And he did this at a pastor's house. From what I understand, like he was a young guy in his 20s, and he went to spend some time with another worker in a church that he was attending. They were both pastors, and the family had a 12-year-old daughter, and he raped her. And he just didn't rape her just one time. He raped her over a 4-year time span. And yeah, it's terrible, right? Just awful. And the woman in question, well, she became a woman, and she'd send him emails saying, look, I need money for therapy. And he'd say, look, you're not getting anything. And if you continue to email me or demand money, I'm going to get the cops on you. And then his wife, Robert Morris's wife, called the victim and said, I forgive you, which is, crazy. It's victimizing the victim, right? You're taking the victim and turning her into the culprit. And other stuff happened. Like, he told the church that he had a sexual dalliance with a young lady in the past, and they said, oh, that's okay, we won't bring it up, because he's a dynamic speaker. He attracts a lot of people. And finally, the woman, who's now almost my age, came clean. She was hesitant because she didn't want her life to get destroyed, and she came clean, and now the cat's out of the bag, and he resigned from his position. And what's even more gross is that he said that this girl at the time, 12 years old, had the Jezebel spirit. In other words, he's blaming her for for being unable to restrain himself. Somehow she lured him into this horrible crime, which should come as no surprise, because that's what a lot of criminals do. They're psychopaths, right? They're masters at gaslighting and manipulation. They feel no empathy, so that's not a big deal to be able to gaslight and to try to turn the table, in other words, and make themselves a victim. So that's not a big deal. So what is the purpose of this video? Is it to just inform you about Robert Morris? No. This is actually a call out to Justin Peters. Justin Peters is another pastor. I like the guy. He seems like a very likable guy, and he'd be a great neighbor. And this isn't the first time I've called him out. Just that, I'm not famous, so he's not going to respond, but I'm going to keep trying anyway. Because Justin Peters is John MacArthur's boy. And all he ever does is exalt John MacArthur. Now, let me set this up first, though. Justin Peters was talking about Robert Morris and said how the police should have been involved. And right away, the police should have been involved. And Not everything is subject to church discipline. You know, some things are so terrible, they rise above church discipline, and you got to call in the outside authorities. You know, that kind of thing. You got to bring the government to bear for certain crimes. So now I'm bringing this up because, like I said, Justin Peters is John MacArthur's boy, and John MacArthur had a similar incident. Now listen, I love John MacArthur. I think he's a great Bible teacher, the greatest I've ever heard. But he's a narcissist. You know, he's like the Mick Jagger of the evangelical world. Millions of followers, heard all over the globe. And something similar happened in the sense that you had a person named Eileen Guay whose children were being molested by her husband, and who were and the family was being terrorized by the husband. The husband was a member in good standing with the church, and John sent a biblical counselor over there instead of going to the police. And they said to Eileen, look, your husband's repenting. You have to let him back in the house. And she said, no. And they kept telling her, you got to let him back in. Even though, you know, he's an abuser. He's not going to do it anymore. She said, I'm not doing it. Anyway, the long story short is she was excommunicated from Grace Community Church. That's John MacArthur's church. And publicly humiliated. Meanwhile, a year or two later, her husband went to trial for his crimes, and he's still in prison. He's been in prison now for over 20 years. He came up for parole. They rejected it. And he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison for his crimes. And John MacArthur, look, I'm not saying this to be contentious. I think the evidence is kind of there. He swept it under the rug. Right? Police should have been involved. Instead, they wanted to decide the matter as a church discipline case. And when they did that, what they did was they scolded the victim for her bad behavior and kicked her out. It's crazy. And, you know, Wendy Guay, I've mentioned this before in a video. Her father was a member of the church, and he repeatedly raped her. And when it was discovered, you know, he left. He went to another church. No one called the police, nothing. And she wrote John a letter, Pastor John a letter saying, look, I've been through hell with this, and I need a sense of closure. Can you help me out? And he wrote back saying, you just got to get over it. You know, yeah, your father raped you and you were abused and yada, yada, yada. You just got to get over it. Very blasé. And Justin, even though, you know, I like John MacArthur, I think he's an old geezer. I think times were different back then. You know, you can't judge a man in 2000 who was in, let's say, his 60s to a guy in 2024 with all this new woke stuff and the rest of it. The guy's 85 years old. Let's put it that way. He's a geezer. You know, and times have changed. You know, we've all, you know, all us old people have seen this type of behavior in our neighborhood, and, you know, the family with the reputation, yada, yada. A lot of times the police weren't involved. They committed their atrocities, and it was a family thing, and it was disgusting, but we all snickered about it, ha ha ha. And society's just changed. You can't do that, you know, without facing criminal penalties, stiff criminal penalties anymore. And he needs to come out and apologize. And Justin Peters, who's always exalting John and looking up to John. Oh, John, you're the best thing since sliced bread. We all love you, John. He's got to tell him. You got to tell him. Justin, you got to go to him and say, look, you screwed up, and you got to apologize to these women. You don't have much time left. You're 85 years old. You got one foot in the grave, the other on a banana peel. You got to apologize to him. Anyway, I'm at 10 minutes, so I'm going to leave it there. I don't like to go over 10 minutes because I feel, people get bored, right? Especially looking at this face. So anyway, I'll stop there. I wish you all a great day. And if you like this, press like. And if you want to subscribe, press subscribe. I'm up to 27 subscribers. 28. Anyway, God bless you. Bye-bye.